Greetings and welcome to the Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. We hope that you enjoy what you're about to see, and you can find us on the corner of Broadway and Church Streets at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings. Or you can find us at bgmethodist.org and on Facebook at Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. On Wednesday of this last week, we officially started the season of Lent. Now, I would say we officially started it. We started it differently than I've ever started a season of Lent before. We started it with far too much sugar than any person should ever have. We had the sweets and treats, Debbie, and I walk in and, I was, thinking pretty good of myself because I'm bringing in a big cake that I made, and I see another red velvet cake, I'm seeing cookies, I'm seeing Rice Krispie treats, I'm seeing all this stuff going, wow, am I ever going to get to sleep sometime in the next 3 days? Because there is all kinds of sugar that is out there. But we did. We had fun. We got started with that. Then we went into the Ash Wednesday service, and I knew when putting it together, I'm not sure that we can do Ash Wednesday like sometimes happens at Ash Wednesday, because there are some Ash Wednesday services that you come out of them and you're sitting there and you're going, I must be an awful, horrible, deplorable, depraved human being because I've been felt and made so guilty that I must be pure evil. And sometimes I look at it and go, holy cow, really, this is what we're supposed to feel coming out of Ash Wednesday. And it's not the intention, it's what's going on in Ash Wednesday, and we kind of get that piece of it kind of wrapped in there. And I'm thinking I always think to myself, I'm not a horrible, evil person. Yeah, true, sometimes I have problems adulting, and I feel like I'm 15 or 25 again, but that doesn't mean I'm evil or bad or anything. It just means I probably need to grow up. That's kind of what I feel like. But there is a piece of that, though, that is so very important, which is that we recognize that even good folks, which I think most of us are, the three of them sitting down there makes me wonder sometimes, but at least when they're sitting together. But we're mostly good folks, but we all have the things that we struggle with. We all have the bad habits that we want to try and do something about. We all have relationships with family and friends and other folks that are around us that we wish maybe were better or less strained. And we all have the ways that we treat other people, or the ways that we're treated by them, that we say, well, there are things that could be better. There are things that we could do differently. There are things that, by golly, if we could just kind of get through this, that we could come out on the other side of this and we could be better people. But sometimes it's hard to know, how do we do that? And Ash Wednesday is a time where we are reminded that that's normal. That all of those things and all those things that we feel is normal because we're human, because we're regular people. We're all going to have those issues. We're all going to have those problems. And the refrain on Ash Wednesday is, and I have to look this up every year, and I never quite get it all right, but basically goes, from dust you are made, to dust you shall return, repent and believe the gospel. There's two pieces of that. The first part of it is saying, remember, you know what, you're human, you're fallible, you're going to make mistakes. Remember that we are finite beings, and that no matter what good or bad or whatever happens in our lives, at some point, that's going to come to an end. But the hope of Ash Wednesday and Lent is that there is the gospel message, that there is the promise that comes in Jesus Christ, and that humanness, all those things don't have to be an end. They don't have to be the defining piece of who we are, that there is more to that message, that we have a chance to reset and to start over. In music and in performances, whether it's Joseph playing and the times that he practices, or choirs or bands or musicals or plays or dance performances. If you weren't at the game the other night, Miley and Cameron were up there and performing the little cheerleaders. They did a wonderful job the other night. But there's a phrase that comes out when you say, from the top. And from the top is to say, we're going to go back to the beginning of this piece and we're going to run it all the way through so we get a sense of how the whole thing goes and how it all comes together. We're going to run through the whole thing, and what happens on Lent and what happens today is that this is our chance to go back to the top. Ash Wednesday says, you can restart, you can start over, you can have a new start. And this Sunday says, and let's take it from the top. Let's start from the very beginning. As we go through the season of Lent, we're going to do something different that I've not ever really done before. We're going to follow one of my favorite hymns that's in the hymnal. That is, it's the one that's up there. That's Lord of the Dance. Part of it is I just like to sing it because the music nerd side of me says, hey, this is just fun. I like this. But the other part of me that likes it is that those 5 verses that are there tell the gospel story. And so each Sunday through the season of Lent, for our special services of Ash Wednesday and Maundy, Thursday, we're going to focus on a different verse of that's going to kind of set the tone and the theme for our day, for our service. And this morning we're going to go straight from the top. We're going to start with the very first verse. This is verse number 1, and Lord of the Dance. And it's going to set that tone for us as we look at starting this Ash Wednesday journey with one another. So you don't need to stand up, but I'm gonna play this, and we're gonna have the words we know. It may be a little bit faster than we're used to, but I invite you to join in singing the first verse of Lord of the Dance. Now, if you've done the math, you've realized there are only 5 verses to that hymn, but there's 7 Sundays in Lent, and then a couple of additional services means I had to go out and find some other verses somewhere. So we've got a few more verses that maybe we aren't going to be quite so familiar with that'll pop up every once in a while, but not for another couple of weeks. But what I love about this verse is that what the hymn says in music, John's Gospel tells us explicitly in that first chapter. In that first chapter of John, we get this understanding, we get this sure and certain knowledge that Jesus was there from the very beginning. From the beginning of all things, Jesus is present and is there and is God. But the good news for us is that Jesus also came into this world and is completely human too. He was born into this world like all of us are born, and how that all works, how you can be both God and completely God and completely human, that's the mystery that we aren't ever going to understand how all of that works. But we can know that is the way that it happens. And I love how verse 14 puts this, the Word became flesh and made his home among us. We have seen his glory like that of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. This is what Jesus does. He comes into the world and he lived his life like we live ours. And the good news for us is that's a good thing for us to know. That he is our ultimate authority. He is not going to be overruled by anyone else because he was there in the very beginning, but he is also here with us. So what he tells us here and now is the truth that we can hold on to, and that's not ever going to be overruled because he is God. Now this is the point where there are some folks that I know of that would look at this and they would say, and that's a good thing because that means when Jesus pronounces judgment on you sinners, and they always point at someone or a group of people or whatever and say, you sinners, that means that judgment is final. I look at that and say, well, I'm not so sure that I buy into that, but then I think to myself, well, no, Jesus did come. They say, well, Jesus came to pronounce judgment. I say, well, you're right, Jesus did come to pronounce judgment. I'll agree with you on that part of it, but what kind of judgment was it that Jesus came to pronounce? For that, we back up a couple of verses. But those who did welcome him, those who believed in his name, he authorized to become God's children, born not from blood, nor from human desire or passion, but born from God. Jesus' judgment on us is not one of punishment. Jesus' judgment on us is say, you're one of mine. You're one of my children. I name you as one of God's children. I make that pronouncement. That's the judgment that Jesus brings to us. And that shows what Jesus did was necessary. That he came into the world, all is necessary because of that judgment. If Jesus just came into the world to pronounce judgment and to punish us, that would have been a whole lot easier to toss lightning bolts at us from up in heaven, because then you've got the high ground and you can just really kind of toss that down there. He wouldn't need to come into the world for that. He came into the world because that's what needed to be so that we could learn. And that's where I love the metaphor that comes in this hymn, is that Jesus didn't come into the world to pronounce a judgment of punishment, but Jesus came into the world to give us dance lessons. You didn't know you were going to get another set of dance lessons, did you? But Jesus is never going to make me Fred Astaire or Sammy Davis Jr. He might make me one of the Three Stooges, but even that might be a little bit much to ask for. I'm not ever going to be a great dancer, but Jesus can teach me a lot. He can teach me a lot about what to do and how to do it, and all of those things. That he can teach me those lessons that maybe I lost somewhere along the way. Jesus comes and he says, why don't you join in this dance? Jesus isn't giving us a judgment of punishment, but he's giving us a judgment that says, I love you, you are a part of my family, I place my name on you, and here let me show you something different. Jesus, in coming into the world, says, I'm going to teach you something new. Maybe something that you've lost over time, and I'm going to give it back to you. He's teaching us to dance again, teaching us how to live out this life that emulates this perfect relationship that we see between God as the three persons of the Trinity, when the mystery is how all of that works, because that's something that's beyond our ability to understand, how three persons of a Trinity can all be God together. But we know it has something to do with the relationship between them, the perfect relationship, the perfect love that they share with one another, that we catch a glimpse of, that we see part of, because we are brought into that family. Jesus has placed his mark on us and says, we are his, and we emulate that as best we can in this world. And Jesus is teaching us how to dance. And that's where the best teaching comes from. In John's Gospel, he starts it off by saying, let's go back to the top. Take it from the top, and let's start this story over so we can see how this dance goes. So we can remind ourselves where we're coming from, and we can know where it is that we're going. So how do we do this, though? How do we take these lessons that Jesus is giving to us, and how do we take them out into the rest of the world? Three pieces to this. The first one is to know that you won't be perfect. That's why I'm closer to the Three Stooges than I am Fred Astaire. Because I'm not going to be good at that. That's the lesson of Ash Wednesday, is that we aren't going to be perfect, and that's okay. That's part of what it means to be human. We aren't going to get all of this right, but we can make the attempt. We can work on it. The second part of it is no practice alone. God exists in three persons in the Trinity. They set up this thing that we come together. We form churches, we form faith communities, because that's where we do our best dancing. That's where we do our best learning. That's where we do our best practicing. That's where we do the things that help us to overcome the hard struggles of our lives. Jesus says, don't practice alone. Where two or three are gathered, there I will be also. We come together to share in that lesson, and that hope, and that love that comes from Jesus. So we don't do it alone. And the last one of these is, the best learning is teaching. I've heard that, folks say that before. You don't really know something until you can teach it. In the church world, we call this outreach and evangelism. What we're really doing is, we're teaching others the lessons that we've learned. We're teaching others how to do this thing. In the process of it, we're learning that a whole lot better. We're learning the better ways to pull these things, to do these things, to share what Jesus is showing us, to share the lessons, the dance lessons that Jesus is giving to us. Now, sometimes we take this and we have to learn new steps. And that's okay. Sometimes we need to learn those new steps. Sometimes we have to relearn old steps that we've forgotten over time, that we have just kind of fallen away. But more importantly than those is that we practice. Is that we practice and practice and practice. I never would have made it through any of high school and college and performing in the groups I performed in unless we practiced all the time. Joseph wouldn't be able to stand up here and play the piano for us unless he practiced all the time. We wouldn't be able to do what we do unless we practice. Zach and McCoy and the other kids, they wouldn't be able to go out and play ball the way they play ball, except that they practice a lot. It's in the practicing that we really put those lessons, we learn them well, they become second nature to us so we can then live them out in ways that feel comfortable and feel right, and it changes our world. And in turn, we do this last one. We go and we share those lessons and we teach those lessons to others so that their world is changed also. As we go as we take this with us and we go through this season of Lent, let's take this time to take it from the top. To start at the beginning and to begin reworking and relearning that story and practicing it so much more so we can take it out, we can share it with those that are around us, so we can share those lessons, we can teach those lessons, and through that, Christ's love, not just for us, but for all folks, the way that he calls out to us and says, "You are mine," can be shared with all the world, and that world can be changed because of what he is doing. Let us go and let us take all of this and do it in Christ's name. Amen.